Today we speak with Michaela Drapes, Director of Strategy and Consulting of Made Media, whose iconic client list includes Royal Albert Hall, the New York City Ballet, Lincoln Center, Los Angeles Philharmonic, Glyndebourne, among many others. You may not immediately think of the arts as a vanguard for digital commerce, but consider, you think it's tricky having a product with 100 permutations? That's cute. Try selling concert tickets with 50,000 variants ranging from $5 to $4,000. You think your traffic spikes are troubling? Adorable. Try managing a horde of 50,000 Mitski fans, seated with a malign smattering of e-brigands and digital goblins, all hitting your site at once. You think your clients are primadonnas? Oh, eye roll, cape flourish, and exuent stage left. Pinkies up, people. We're classing up the joint. I'm Justin Burrows. This is Commerce Chats by High Velocity. Michaela, welcome to Commerce Chats. You are with Made Media,
Yes.
based out of London.
Yes, that's correct.
So-
Although our spiritual home is in Birmingham, which is where the
yes.
company was founded. I am one of like 3 people who work out of London. We're a fully remote company.
You're the strategic director?
I am the director of strategy and consulting. I joined the company a couple of years ago as head of strategy, and I recently moved into this role as part of the senior leadership team, which is very exciting.
And what does Made Media do?
We are a specialist digital agency, digital strategy and consulting agency. Mostly what we do is we build incredible websites for arts and culture organizations around the world, around the English-speaking world, I should say. So we have some lovely clients here in the UK and in Australia, and then about 70%, maybe even more at this point of our business comes from the US. Where we have some incredible clients that I would love to list a really starry CV of who we work with. So here in the UK, we work with the Royal Albert Hall, which is one of the most iconic performance venues in the entire country, perhaps even nay the world. And Glyndebourne, a beautiful country house opera company. I had the privilege to go there recently. They sell out almost every season, every performance, and so it was really. As a mere mortal, I would struggle to go to a performance, but they graciously gave us tickets, and it was truly amazing. There's it starts at 4, and then you'd have an hour and a half for dinner. There's also intermissions where you can go stroll the lawn with your Pimm's cup, that kind of thing. You can eat a meal there, or you can bring a picnic. So it's really quite lovely. And Wales Millennium Centre, which is a really fun challenge because I don't know if you know this, but in Wales, you can neither privilege English nor Welsh as the prominent language in any of your communications. They have to be basically presented equally, and that is a very interesting challenge digitally, as you might imagine. So we did our level best to give them a fully bilingual purchase path, like marketing website and purchase path. They required a lot of customizations with various translation tools, as well as like manual translations that the Welsh speakers also enter into the system for the presentation in the purchase path. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I have a question about that, because I've worked with a Quebecois company before, and they have similar restrictions about you need to have French, you need to have English.
Yeah.
So do you do localization if you're doing Welsh and English, or is it like one of those things like road signs where you just have it side by side?
No, and we also do the website for the National Arts Centre of Canada, which very similar situation, also needs to be Anglophone and Francophone. And it's very the presentation there is very similar as well. Basically you give on first load, you give the user a choice. We don't lean on localization because for various reasons, but mostly like you might have your computer set to be in Welsh, but you might want to do the transaction in English for whatever reason. So we don't force, we always let the user make the choice when it comes to that.
Okay. Yeah, that's always something I think really interesting as, e-commerce progresses. A lot of companies are growing into the international the international realm, and it's like the trick is how do you keep a uniformity of brand while also being truly localized, which isn't just language. There are other elements involved.
Yeah, that's true, and that's why it's really great on the Wales site in particular. We on some of the Spanish language sites we do, and like we just did a site for the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center that uses a translation service to do 8 different languages. But in
Mm.
terms of Wales in particular, what's great about the manual entry is that they are able to sort of lean into colloquialisms, and I think because Welsh is such a wild and amazing and beautiful language, that it does have a specificity that almost can't be conveyed through automatic translation. So we I would say almost all of the site is just, there are just 2 different versions of every page on the marketing site, and then there are 2 different like language libraries in the e-commerce path
Hmm.
to feed all that in. So
Yeah, yeah, that's really. I find it really interesting because the clients that you call them, you have a particular word for them. They're venues, but you also called them, was it presenters? What was the word you would use to describe them?
yeah, I think it kind of depends on the field they're in. So like, in terms of like, say for instance, our US clients, so
I
we
recognize a
have
few of them, right?
we have a bunch of, this will be a really good, like a nice encapsulation of what you're talking about. So we work with Lincoln Center in New York City, and then we also work with a bunch of the constituent organizations in Lincoln Center. So we work with New York City Ballet, which is my former employer. We work with the New York Philharmonic and the Chamber Music Society, all of which are constituent organizations of Lincoln Center, but they all have their own CRMs, they all have their own websites, they all handle their own ticketing. In my mind, Lincoln Center they're a landlord, but they're also a presenting organization. They don't have their own venues, and so they present their programming that they do in the houses of the constituent organizations. And so, but like a more traditional presenting organization is somebody like the Royal Albert Hall, where they may have, all of the big promoters come in and have a concert, or they present the BBC proms, or they have their own programming. So they basically are what they call here in the UK a receiving house, where they receive the performance and then they put it on, and then the performance moves on, as opposed to like somebody like the New York Philharmonic who lives inside David Geffen Hall. That's where they perform. They might tour, but the bulk of their performances are in their home venue. Little- But yeah, so I think sort of the lingo of our world is that, some organizations have a home and they present there. Some organizations just present others, and some just tour as well, or they do a mix, like Chamber Music Society tours and they play at Lincoln Center.
So, like, from a just to stomp the art out of it and be a marketing prick,
Yeah.
what is the what's the brand relationship in those things? I mean, like, what brand are you presenting? If you're, I mean, because arts are strange because you have the New York City Ballet, you have Royal Albert Hall, and those are different. But if one performs in another, who are you? How do you
That's
decide how to message to the user?
so interesting. I did have to deal with this a lot, more so in my previous life, working at New York City Ballet on the digital side there. And it would depend on where we went, but most often, if we were touring, which actually for them doesn't happen that often, because picking up and moving 100 dancers and 100 pieces of orchestra and all the
Mm-hmm.
costumes and all the sets and all the dressers and the repeteurs and the accompanists and the PTs and everything. It's a lot of work. But when they would tour, it kind of fell under 2 things. But generally, when you get to your receiving house, wherever you're performing, they're the ones who handle the marketing and the ticketing. And so it's kind of like a co-brand at that point. Like they are presenting you, they're doing the heavy lifting, but they are sort of leaning on you as the like prestigious art organization to like carry on your end, and this is really where things have changed quite significantly, I think, with the advent of digital advertising, and digital channels, and having your own owned digital stake in the ground, as an organization as well. Like, we could say like, oh, we're going to be at the Paris Opera House performing, and the Paris Opera House would be the ones who are selling the tickets and doing all the local promotion and things like that. So there is, I would say that's generally the way that goes. It's just a very friendly, usually, hopefully, fingers
Mm-hmm.
crossed, collaboration between the venue who might do the marketing and the actual mechanics of the ticket sales, and the the artistic company that's coming in and performing, who may then also too promote the event on their channels.
There's a lot of analogous functionality in kind of like arts facing commerce or whatever you want to call that experience. If I have an e-commerce site and I have a SKU
Mm.
and an item and it has variations to it, we're
Mhm.
talking like maybe it has 5 different colors, maybe it has 6 different sizes to it. If I'm going to buy buy a ticket or get into an experience like, let's say, the Royal Albert Hall or the opera, it has a little bit more variations than that. There are a lot of seats there.
Yeah, I think you've really hit on the complex, like you've really gotten to the crux of the complexity of what it is that we do, and what the challenges are around what we do. Because first of all, obviously, you're selling. One of my colleagues likes to say, we're selling a moment in time. We're selling a ticket to a moment in time and a location. And like that could be anywhere doing anything. And so, you kind of have to abstract it sometimes to down to that to really start to begin to think about what it is that we do. And so one of the biggest challenges is really selling the value proposition of a seat. Like, how do you convey, first of all, you've got to get the person in the door, and you've got to sell them on coming to your event, right? Like you've got to get
Mm-hmm.
them interested in, like, I don't know, a friend and I were talking about how we really wanted to go see the Brodsky Quartet do a Shostakovich program. Well, we're already
Mm-hmm.
sold on that we want to go see this, but it's an unfamiliar venue. We're ticketing professionals, but we don't know this venue, and how do we know what seat is good? How do we know, why is this seat 75 pounds? Why is this seat 96 pounds? Why is this seat, why are
Mm-hmm.
the prices like, and then so you also have to like explain, you have to communicate to the user in a very short amount of time, usually on a very small screen, because most people are looking at these things on their phones now. What is it that you're buying exactly? If you've already sort of sold them on the experience, now you've got to get them into the right location and the right seat so that they then have a great experience. Because that's the other part of it too. Like that this is where sort of the touchy feely aspect comes in. Like, so much of the challenge of the arts is getting people to come back, and so that really begins literally with that first time you sell them a ticket, because you've got to be able to convey to them what they're getting, what the value is, what to expect, what is going to, what they're going to see, what they're going to, possibly even a little taste of what they're going to experience. And so you have to bundle all this up and throw it at them in a very short amount of time and help them make a purchase decision, and then hopefully get them through as quickly as possible so that they do not change their minds. So, you can use like best available seating. You can give people like a really robust seat map where they have a view from seat image, or they can sort of get there's a provider now that's out there that gives you like a 360 view of the hall from your seat, which is cool. I'm glad somebody's finally doing that. It's a little niche, it's a little strange,
Mm-hmm.
but it's great because a lot of time we do see a lot of people who are making a very serious ticket purchase are indeed doing it on their desktop, on their laptop machine. They're not doing it
Mm-hmm.
on their phone. And so, you've really got to communicate everything about the value of what they're purchasing in the moment, as like I said, as quickly as possible, and then get them through that purchase path as quickly as possible. And make it as like, people are used to now, like they're used to the Amazon, they're used to the, they're used to the like one-click checkout. And this is the thing that we contend with quite a bit is, or yeah, they're used to like the airline seat selection experience. And we kind of try and consider all of these things in the work that we do, and we sort of pick and choose from the user experiences from all corners of e-commerce to really make that experience as seamless and lovely as possible for the user, because so much of for a lot of our very high profile clients who do have a vibe, shall we say, of an elevated experience, they want that in their website as well. Like
Hmm.
they want that ticket purchase feeling to feel very bespoke. They want it to feel like something special. They want to upsell you, as the Royal Albert Hall does, on a, $4,000 hospitality package in a 12-seat box. Sorry, 4,000 pound hospitality experience in a 12-seat box. Like, people buy these things. They want to
So you
have
can
that
go.
experience.
Wait. So you can go to the Royal Albert Hall. See, this is what blows my mind.
Yeah.
Okay, Brodsky Quartet. You're doing water music, something,
Yeah.
and you go in there, and as a user using the same website on my this same phone, I'm on my phone here. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going through their website, and I can buy a 60-pound ticket, or I can buy a 4,000-pound experience with the same
Yes.
like checkout flow. See, that
Yes.
just
Yes, you
blows
can.
my mind. Is that the same product? I mean, what is that?
Yes.
That complexity, that multiple layering, I think is really fascinating. Uh,
Yes. It is the same product, and that's and actually we are in the process now of taking sort of the Royal Albert Hall sort of ticket flow to the next level. Because at the moment you can do this, but it's a little clunky. And they want to be presenting everything. I think the lowest price, and they're really on at the moment, they're very focused on being accessible at all price points. So there will even
mhm.
be like a 5-pound ticket in that house,
Yeah,
where you can also get a 4,000-pound box,
yeah.
with a waiter and hors d'oeuvres and what have you. Because this is sort of the mode that I think especially is happening in the UK at the moment, is sort of because the cost of living crisis that we're having here, which is maybe hard to explain to Americans, but it is real. Like, the value of people's salaries has not kept up with inflation, and there's a lot of income inequality here. And the arts organizations sort of have a mandate to really lean into to correcting that as much as they can, in their product offerings. And so we are in the process of redoing that purchase flow, so it makes it even easier to see all of the price points and all of the locations. And, is this a restricted view seat? Do you have accessibility needs? Do you want that premium experience? All of these things are communicated in one go, which does require a lot of very like specific focus on user journeys and personas, and like thinking through, like, okay, how would somebody who wanted this sort of experience go? Okay, well, if somebody wanted another kind of experience, what is their user journey like? We spend a lot of time investigating at and picking at and like untangling the best way to sort of achieve every possible successful purchase. But backing up a little bit, we are, I would say, probably one of the leading agencies in the world for integrating with a very specific CRM that is used by arts and culture organizations around the world, called Tessitura. It is a very specific and unique product. It was developed by the Metropolitan Opera in the late 90s. And its value proposition is that it provides a sort of 360 holistic view of your patron, right? So you have their giving history and you have their ticket purchase history, and those two things are visible to someone in the CRM. So you can see, like, oh, this person buys, you know, tickets to 6 events a year, and they give us $75 at the end of the year. And you can start really the idea is that you can use all of these data points to both cultivate your donor base and cultivate your marketing pipeline and getting people to be return visitors, and like it's sort of that unified vision of the patron, and their whole experience with the organization is really the value proposition of this particular CRM. And but it being something that was developed and created in the late 90s should tell you right now
Mm-hmm.
what it's like. And
Yeah.
they're in the process of really modernizing and making a lot of changes to the product that we are also having to react to. They had like a SOAP API for many years. They're now completely killing that off. They're sunsetting that. They're totally going RESTful now. So like every site that was ever built to integrate with it in a meaningful way has had to go through a transformation of making sure that all of their back end integrations are all redefined. And so it's actually been quite a process for our little corner of the world who uses this software, and it's not an insubstantial number of organizations. Everyone that I named and
Mm-hmm.
then some use it, and they're in the museum world. They botanical gardens, zoos.
Mm-hmm.
We do the website for the Mystic Aquarium. Mystic Aquarium uses this particular CRM. So
Mm-hmm.
they're very well entrenched in this space. And so we have carved ourselves out a little niche as being pretty much like a really like kind of cutting edge place that you go to if you want to really stretch the bounds of what is possible
Mm-hmm.
with that integration. So that's why we work with Royal Albert Hall to really to make that ticketing path possible. We work with the Los Angeles Philharmonic, and we do all the ticket sales for the Hollywood Bowl, which is, I believe, the largest venue that uses the Tessitura CRM. I think it's like, I'm gonna get in trouble for not remembering how big it is, but it's very large. The Hollywood Bowl, it's
Super
enormous,
big. Yeah,
super
yeah.
big. 16, 17,000 capacity, maybe bigger. It might be
Mm-hmm.
twice that big. I don't know. I am very poor with numbers, but it's quite large. And that's another very proud, wonderful integration that we've done, because they're in a hardcore business. Like the Los Angeles Philharmonic makes a lot of money and
Mm-hmm.
brings a lot of people in the door, and they do not mess around, and their business rules are very complex, and their throughput on busy on sales is off the charts.
What is it busy on sale?
Whew. I'm gonna I want to say like on a stand. So they say, I was on a call the other day and somebody defined it as more than 45 transactions a minute with this
Oh,
particular CRM. And that's like, I've seen more. Like
yeah.
we can get it to where there's like, where it can be a lot more hardcore than that.
Okay.
Where
Okay. 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 So let's talk about this, because this is something that doesn't happen, or if it does happen, it's very, very rare. It's like an exclusive drop, or it's a publicity stunt or something like that,
Mhm.
where everybody is at your site at the same time. And especially for events that are special or have a unique element to them, I have a sense of like a panic when I
Mhm.
go in. It's like, am
Mhm.
I going to be able to get through? There was the whole Taylor Swift debacle. I don't think that was tested,
No,
but
no. Ticketmaster is also like they're one of their biggest competition. Like Ticketmaster wants
mhm.
to own the whole space. So,
But what do you
they're
do? What do you do if like you have somebody, it's just a crazy ticket, and not only do you have a bunch of hardcore fans wanting to press refresh on your site, but you get all these like little tech goblins out there that are trying to
oh
snap it
yes.
up and resell, and or
Oh
just
yeah.
use fake credit cards.
Yes. This is like you see, I'm like, "Ooh, Justin,
I
don't."
hate these
I mean,
goblins. These little goblins. They're goblins.
they
I
are
hate them.
goblins. The
What do you
ghosts.
do?
So,
Just
oh my gosh.
how do we get rid of the goblins?
So there's like, obviously there's a lot going on behind the scenes, as you might imagine. In the tech stack, there's a lot going on to make sure to mitigate a lot of these things. But I'll start on the presentation side for the user.
Yes.
So and then we'll go in. So one of the things that we've been talking about, especially I've been talking about this a lot with my boss, the CEO of our company, James Bagley, who has worked in the ticketing ecosystem for a really long time. He's sort of thinking about this like sort of fast and slow commerce aspect to ticket sales. And in that, like in a normal situation, in a normal transaction, you want to get people through as quickly as possible, like I was saying. Like you want to buy 4 tickets to the Nutcracker. You just want to, and you're like, your day is crazy. You just want to take your kids to the Nutcracker. You just want to buy those 4 tickets and like cross that off your list, right? You just want to get on with your day. But if you are like, say, for instance, a super fan of, I don't know, Oasis, as shall we say, a
I've
recent
heard of them.
example.
I've heard of
Yes.
them.
I'll
Yes.
for our dear fellow Gen Xers in the house. So you may have you might have heard, and it was a big
I
deal here
yeah,
in the
yeah.
UK. That was also yet another like sort of big deal, kind of like messed up on sale situation. And this is where you start to think about how the slow commerce aspect of an on sale actually makes more sense because you want it to be fair. You want to be conveying the sense of fairness and transparency about the process for everyone who wants to buy a ticket. So that's
Yeah.
where
Yeah,
things
I'm not
like
looking for speed. I just want to make sure that if I've let me see if I say this right. If I've queued up, that
mhm.
I have my space in the queue.
Exactly. And so like maybe so on we'll use that example as sort of representative example, but I can also talk a little bit more about what maybe a more like like a still a high demand but much less high profile on sale
Hmm.
might feel like. But in the terms of something like a big once in a lifetime, maybe if it even happens. I by the way, I put my money on the fact that this reunion is not going to happen. I think they're going to
I didn't
break
want to
up.
say I didn't want to say anything, but I am morbidly curious. Like it is not a healthy way. My interest in this is
No, it's
not
really
healthy, but it's like last time I saw you, you hawked a loogie on the stage and walked off. So what are you gonna do now?
exactly.
Uh,
So I have I'm getting ready to put some money on go down to the betting shop and put some money because you can wager on this because it's
mhm.
England and you can wager on anything. You can also wager on like what song they're going to open with if indeed they do actually end up playing. But like I've got my money on the fact that this isn't going to happen. But anyway, the idea is that in order to get that fairness and transparency, you have what they call here in the UK ballots, which is the way that they do the Olympics or Wimbledon or even like something like Glyndebourne, the big opera, or even the Wagner place. Why can't I remember the name of the Wagner place right now? In where they do the opera there. Anyway, there are places in the world where they have such a high demand for the tickets that they already have some of these things in place, and you kind of don't hear about it because they do it all the time. They use a
Ballots.
ballot. They use a ballot, which is basically like a pre-registration form, right? Like they say, okay, here's the program. You send us what you want. We're going to put you in the hopper. We're going
Mm.
to do a draw. You have X number of hours or X number of days to complete your transaction or opt out. And if you opt out, you might lose your place in line for next season.
Ooh,
So
yeah.
think wisely. So that's sort of like how those things work, which is how you end up getting your Wimbledon tickets or
Hmm.
your Glyndebourne tickets or what have you. And it's like slowing down the process to the point where you are forcing people to give you their choices. And then you say, here you go. You have been chosen.
Hmm.
Act on this now. Like
Yeah.
literally the slowness is so intense
Hmm.
that it does give an air of absolute fairness to the
Hmm.
process. Now, the thing that kind of broke down with like the Taylor Swift and the Oasis like fan sign up things was that they did do those, but they didn't quite go far enough in terms of even controlling the availability or the lottery aspect to those pre-sales. And that's really like you can't you really have to slow it down to the point of literally stopping, when there's
Mm-hmm.
that much demand. Now, on the other hand, if you have sort of like a mid-range artist who like sends out their Spotify fan, you know, pre-sale code, like they're,
Mm-hmm.
they're like, do you know who Mitski is? Ask your
I
kids.
yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure your kids love Mitski. She's incredible. She had a big we had a situation a couple of like about a year, maybe like 9 months ago or so. She announced a tour and all the dates went on sale at once, and it just so happened that like 4 or 5 of the venues were people that we work with, and I would
Mm-hmm.
say at almost all of them they didn't know who she was. So
Yeah.
they were not ready for this experience, and all of their sites came almost like they didn't come down because we kept the sites up, but the traffic was insane. They were not ready
Mm-hmm.
for it. And they really should have had like in that case you have your waiting room software which sits kind of between your marketing site and your ticketing site that kind of collects all of the people who come and just sit.
Wait, what? A waiting room? What
Yeah.
is
So
what?
there's so we actually have this product and we have a couple of competitors in this space that offer like a queuing software that so basically all the people who sit on the website and just refresh
Yeah,
until
yeah,
it
yeah,
goes
yeah.
on sale. This
Boo, boo.
boo
Don't do
this mit
that.
so this mitigates that. This basically collects all of those sessions and puts and like quarantines them from the rest of your site so that like the site is still healthy. People who want to buy tickets to something else can still do that. You're not like
Mm-hmm.
your site isn't like struggling, and basically so everybody who had been sitting on that page or who were interested in that on sale have been shoved into a waiting room to wait
So you
off in the
basically
ether.
have created a completely separate checkout flow or journey, whatever you want to call it.
No, this
For
is just like a holding pen. It's like purgatory. Like
but it's still part of the conversion thing. Like
it
there's
is.
somebody's ready, they
Mm,
got their wallet out,
that's
you
true.
know.
That's true. But basically they are shunted into this waiting room where they are then going to be let out at a sensible rate of speed
Mm-hmm.
for the health of the site to then go through the regular purchase path. So they're sitting in this sort of like literally like a purgatory, but
Yeah.
like they've gone to the event page and we've gone, whoop, you're interested in this event? Welcome to the waiting room.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, so like if you get there early, you just wait. And the thing that we do now with our waiting room software called Crowd Handler is like anybody who's in the waiting room, the holding pen at like 10 a.m. for your 10 a.m. on sale, they're all sitting there. We completely randomize the locations. So then
Mm-hmm.
we try to be as fair as possible. So you are going to be it's not like when you got there, it has nothing to do
Mm-hmm.
with how long you've been sitting there. You're going to get a random position. And we do
Mm-hmm.
this to sort of discourage people from just parking. They're gonna
Yeah.
do it anyway, but and then on
They're,
top of that,
they're being sweaty. That's what
there
I learned from my kids. They're sweat lords. They get there really way too early.
yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They're just
Yeah.
just waiting. Do you remember, like, having to go, like, wait in line for, like, concert tickets in, like, the parking lot?
Yeah.
Of
I
the
had to
venue?
go
Yeah,
down
like
to the butts, the HEB. You get all your tickets from HEB and you would have to line up to get a little wristband to go. I remember doing that to go
yeah.
see U2 at the
Mm,
Frank Irwin Center, South by Southwest, which at that
mhm.
point was a much different thing. But
Yeah,
yeah, that was so cool because you walk around school with your little wristband. But yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
So this is sort of like a version of that.
yeah.
You'll get to the front of the line eventually. But it's very so at that point, you've been randomized, and then we very closely watch the health of the integration with the ticketing CRM because that
Mm-hmm,
API connection can get real hot real fast. We want to make
mm-hmm,
sure that the traffic is moving through at a nice rate of speed, and so we want that throughput to be as smooth as possible. But sometimes it gets real bad, and it gets to a one in one out situation. Like somebody checks
mm-hmm,
out, you throw another one in. Somebody checks out, you throw another one in. But oftentimes, what happens is then we have this the software that we have that I mentioned, Crowd Handler, is pretty smart. And so when there's not a lot of inventory left, it starts letting people through faster because it knows that there's nothing to transact, and then the
Mm-hmm.
waiting room just like vanishes into the ether, and that's it. And then
Mm-hmm.
people cry on Twitter that they didn't get their tickets or whatever. But you know what? It's done, and
That,
your site, you sold out you sold out in 3 minutes or 5 minutes or what have you,
yeah.
and your site is still up and healthy, and people are making donations and transactions for other events, and none the wiser, honestly,
Yeah.
because they didn't have that pre-sale code or what have you. And so really, it's that it's that aspect of making sure that the whole like sort of digital ecosystem stays healthy throughout a busy on sale. And so what I didn't get to is that we also have, so there's also a lot of stuff that happens on the back end to sort of help that as well. A lot of people use like a service like Imperva or Count to block bad actors,
Mm-hmm.
bots, known bots and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
bad IP addresses. Crowd Handler also has an anomaly detector and will auto block based on various factors, known server farms, distance from, you can say, okay, maybe, not people who are trying to buy a ticket to an event in Pittsburgh who are coming from Indonesia. I don't know, maybe they're probably not really legitimate traffic, stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. So, there's a lot going on behind the scenes as well. And like I said, in the tech stack that sort of help keep this watertight as well. So there's a lot of moving parts on a busy on sale to make sure that, like I said, that the rest of the people on your site are none the wiser, that you don't have your CEO going like, why is the site down? Like,
Yeah.
you
That's a
know,
bad feel. That's a bad feel when the CEO is like, "Is the site seems a little slow to me? Seems a little."
exactly. You don't
Yeah.
want that. We
No.
never want that. We never want that. And the thing is that most on sales, even like big ones, we're kind of at the point now where we'll monitor them for folks, but honestly, most of them happen without incident at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
we've just really got it down to a science, and we really feel like this is such a really important service that we provide for our clients, because this is their business.
Yeah.
Literally, selling tickets through their website is, I mean, yes, they present the art, or they create and present the art or what have you, but you got to get the butts in the seats, and you
Yeah.
got to take the money. It's
Yeah.
it's just part of what we do, and we, you know, our that's our mission, is to make that process as seamless and beautiful for people as possible.
Well, I
And that's
think
why.
that's yeah. That's it's interesting because that you talk about that ephemeral experience, that one place in time, and like I still could remember like every play I've seen, like on
Mhm.
Broadway or off Broadway, and I can remember where I sat, what it felt like, and it is really, I don't know. I think that's really interesting. One thing I think is interesting is that in a certain way, the I think about the Globe Theater and how you
Mhm.
had the groundlings that would eat nuts and throw nuts at the actors, and then there were people who had seats up at the top,
Yes.
and you could pay
Yes.
extra for a cushion, or at least
Mhm.
so I read. It's not.
It's
It's a little
still
the same thing. I
it
mean,
is.
isn't it? Yeah.
It is. And I think also too, you can actually still have that experience. Next time you
Yeah.
come to London, we'll go to the Globe, and you can pay extra for your seat cushion.
Yeah, I think that'll be great. It's a facsimile though, right? Because the original
It
Globe,
is a
yeah.
facsimile. Yeah,
Because
yeah,
don't
yeah. It's
don't yank my chain, Michaela. I would be like, oh, forthwith. Let's anon.
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 Verily, verily.
Barely. No, no. I find that's really interesting in that the bones of the arts are
Mm.
still there. Like
Oh
you
yeah.
still have subscribers, you still have,
Mhm.
people working together to like create their own tools. I find it's interesting in many ways that type of transaction almost like more closely mirrors the modern like e-commerce, digital commerce world than, like going to a store. I mean, you're coming in and you have a ticket that represents something, because you're not actually buying a thing, you're buying the promise of a thing online, and
Exactly.
that's what theaters have done. They've got, so I was watching, have you seen this show? It's kind of trashy, but I love it. It's called The Gilded Age. Have you seen the show?
Okay, so first of all, I just have to like preface this by saying that I do not, as a rule, watch a lot of TV, but
Hmm.
but I travel a lot,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and I travel a lot, and so
Hmm.
I'm often at the mercy of what is presented to me on the back of the seat in front of me on my little screen, or
Yes,
the
yeah,
arm, or the swingy arm, or what have you.
yeah.
And so one of my secret shame is that I read all the episode recaps of shows. This is very ridiculous. I read like all the press around, all the think pieces about TV shows so I can
Yeah, yeah.
have conversations with people about things that I have never watched. That I can
Yes.
fake my way through a conversation at a cocktail party or like a conference coffee break or whatever. This is my secret shame, but I literally don't watch that much TV. However, I was like when I was on a flight and the Gilded Age came up, I got so excited because I really wanted to watch it because it's so bad. It's so bad. But also too, when the season 2 came out and it was all about the development of the Metropolitan Opera, I was like, yes. They used to be my neighbor, and
Hmm.
I know a lot of nice, fine folks who work there, all good friends of mine. They're just such a lovely, lovely crew that work there. In their I know like their marketing team and a couple of people from their
Hmm.
fundraising department that I've worked with over the years. But everyone who works there is like the pinnacle of arts, workers in probably in the world really. They're very serious about what they do, but they had like tie-in events with it. They had like a special like I don't know, step and repeat like with the cast and stuff that
Hmm.
they all came by. But I was so excited to watch it because it was like truly outside. So there's two other things that three other. So I was actually talking about this weekend. Somebody asked me how I felt about Black Swan, and I was like ballet people hate Black Swan. Ballet people hate Black Swan, and orchestra people hate Tar for like kind of the similar reasons because they make us look bad. And I mean, to a certain
Yeah,
extent, it's a little true. It's a little too close to home. But when it came to the Gilded Age and the whole like Academy of Music versus Metropolitan Opera drama, I was just like, I was so into it because it was just like, this is my world. This is
yeah.
like a
It's like I
plus.
recognize that.
Yeah,
You
although
know.
I have to say that was the Metropolitan Opera House that was in the 30s that in that's the one before this. I think it was
Oh.
another one actually. There were several, but that was the
Hmm.
first one. It was in I want to say it was in the somewhere between the 20s and the 30s on Broadway,
Hmm.
which is still kind of a grody part of town, but
Yeah.
but yeah, that's where it was initially. And I think the Academy of Music was over on the west side in the
Hmm.
20s somewhere. Anyway, I used to know this, but it's kind of
I
lost.
I
But
I think it's interesting because a lot of the things that they talked about like still go on where you are fundamentally a lot of these you're working with arts organizations that they have to fill their bowls. They have to, they have to eat.
hmm,
So there is a lot going on in the background in terms of like these subscriptions, getting people, and I'm assuming that like a lot of that trying to get your while you may be acquiring new customers, I would imagine that retention and increasing interactions with customers, especially, I mean, maybe at a certain point it becomes more development than it does actual commerce.
yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting because, you know, if you look at the sort of literature coming out of our field and all of the research that's been done and all of there's a million consulting agencies who are all saying like subscriptions are dying, rethink your subscription model, this, that, and the other. But it honestly just depends because there are some people who are really, really dedicated subscribers because what a subscription gets you is like a discount and a
Hmm.
seat, like
Yep.
your seat, and oftentimes a seat that you can keep depending on the kind of organization it is and the house that it's in. That's your seat forever, basically, as long as you renew. And you can
Hmm.
like ask for a better one next year, or oh,
Hmm.
maybe I got laid off and I still need to go, but I need to downgrade this year. Like you can s- you know you can move around the house if you want to, or you can stay in your same seat every year for 50 years and then bequeath your seat to your niece who loves ballet, and then they come, and true
Hmm.
stories, true stories.
Yeah, yeah.
But like, and also too, that's such an important, but what you kind of don't think about, maybe, or if you pause and you think about it, like, why is the subscription model so important? Well, it gives revenue before the performances actually begin, because then you have some liquid cash to like actually mount the production. And so this is why the subscriptions are so important, and that's why it's been such a challenge as the business model has changed, because it really has shifted. Like, this
Hmm.
subscriptions used to be like the bulk of the business, and sort of over time that has shifted, even in places where subscriptions are still a huge part of their business. you know it's still a shift. And so, over the years, you've had to figure out new and exciting ways to get people to keep coming back, but never be dependent on throwing discounts at them to get them back in the door. Like, so that's the real challenge. Like, I came up at the knee of a marketer who was like, we never discount anything, we only add to the
Hmm.
experience. Which I think is a really interesting way of looking at like selling a premium, sort of a premium experience, is like,
Yeah,
you never discount it, you plump it up, you give more for
yeah.
value. And so that's sort of, there's so, and it really, it's so, your pricing strategy and your approach to dealing with whether or not subscriptions are sort of falling off or not in your market is so dependent on your specific product, your specific market, your audience, everything. Like, there's no one size fits all solution for a lot of these organizations in terms of like rethinking their revenue streams. And that's why also too, this is the work that we do is ultimately at the end of the day so very, very bespoke, because no no one organization does things the same way. No one organization presents things the same way. They have, like, there may be similarities, like the seats are still in rows or what have you.
Hmm. Yeah.
Or yes, they all put on, like, I'm never surprised by this, like how many performances are in an orchestra season or a theater season,
Hmm.
or like a theater season is like 6 to 7 productions a year. An orchestra season is like, 100 to 150 shows a year. Like, there are standards, but within that, there are so many layers of like ways of doing things and ways of talking about, all our packages, or we talk about our packages this way and we sell them this way, and this is why we do them this way, because it usually goes back to the piece of paper that they used to use for the
Hmm.
subscription form,
Well, I
which
wanted
is,
to ask about that. I wanted to ask about that
yeah,
because, we'll get clients that will have started in a channel. Like, I mean, the paper catalog. There's several names out there that are like, they have an online thing, but their thing was like Vermont Country Store, LL
I-
Bean.
yeah.
Sorry. Like, do you have some clients who are just like, you have to fax it into this number or a
I would
paper
say
only, or are they all online now finally?
I would say, like, it was during my time of working. So I started at New York City Ballet in 2012, and we still took orders by fax. Fax orders would still come in. And in my time there, I, we were slowly shifting people to transact online. And it wasn't necessarily a huge push. I always used to joke about the grandmas with iPads who were really the ones who were driving that shift. They were getting
Yep.
comfortable with the technology. Like, they,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it was very slow, and then all of a sudden it was like, compound interest. Like, the
Yeah.
the shift from people buying online to like coming to the box office or calling was just like, it flip-flopped
Yeah.
overnight. And obviously post COVID it was even more so. Like, people are
Yeah.
now even more, they I would say even now, like, you know after reopening and being, in the past like 3-4 years, like I said, kind of at the beginning of the conversation, they absolutely expect the same quality level of interaction and technology as they're getting with any other e-commerce site, whether that's Amazon, whether that's their bank, their airline, whatever. People are less and less understanding now of the fact that your e-commerce path is janky. They're aware of fraud. They're
Mm-hmm.
aware of, like, when something doesn't look secure. And if you are presenting even anything that looks remotely janky, you're at a
Hmm.
disadvantage.
Yeah,
Like
those
you,
interactions with third parties, if you don't do those right, it's terrifying.
yeah,
Uh, and especially speaking of the the ladies with the grandmas with iPads. I mean, they're like they get inundated with that stuff, and it's really frustrating. So being able to provide a secure, it's an interesting dynamic
it is,
in terms
yeah.
of expectations. Yeah.
And I would say like we really struggled with patron education about third-party resellers for a couple of years, and I would say like now people are a lot more savvy to that. Like people are
Mm-hmm.
less likely to show up when the Bolshoi, well, they wouldn't come now, but like I always used to hear these stories from the box office treasurers about how when the Bolshoi came and danced at Lincoln Center, that people showed up with like the the worst looking fake paper
Uh huh.
tickets,
Yeah.
and they were just like, "How? Why did you buy this? Like, it's clearly not legit." And I always kind of carry that story with me because, like, you just, people want to believe, or they
Yeah.
just want that. Everybody wants to believe that nobody wants to believe that something is too good to be true when presented.
Yeah.
But I think people are actually definitely more savvy now. I think the consumer education is there, and I think we've shifted from people showing up with, with tickets from bad actors, that the shift is really now towards, and it's been a real imperceptible but very noticeable shift in the past couple of years, with basically people buying tickets with stolen credit cards and then
Yes.
putting them on legitimate resale sites,
Yeah.
so that they do actually go through. They're not trying to sell the same ticket to 20 people. They actually have an individual
Mm-hmm.
ticket and they've put it on SeatGeek or one of those things, what have
Mm-hmm.
you. And it's a legitimate transaction. It's basically like money. It's money laundering, right?
Yeah.
And then
Mm-hmm.
the fraudulent credit card transaction gets dinged. The organization gets the charge back and they take
Mm-hmm.
the hit. And so this is actually where we see the most sort of fraud. That's the worst of the fraud that happens now. Are
Yeah.
chargebacks and fraudulent transactions, or people using stolen credit cards to test the numbers by doing like small donation amounts that then do chargebacks, and it can get really problematic.
Mm.
And a lot of credit card processors do not care that you are a nonprofit.
Yeah.
Do not care that you are a charity. They don't care. They
Yeah.
they they've got a chargeback. What are you going to do about it? So
Yeah.
that's really the most annoying sort of fraud stuff that we see now, that we're trying. That's sort of the next frontier of the mitigation, and that's where those services like like iovation or count come in, and because
Mm-hmm.
they do they will try and flag a transaction as fraudulent at the point of payment.
Okay. Okay. Last
Yeah.
topic. Last topic.
Mm,
Last topic.
mm,
So in the arts, it is a business, but you're dealing with artists. In my experience, like for example, working in fashion or clothing industries, that
uh-huh.
even if somebody's in the e-commerce department, they identify themselves as being part of the fashion industry. And so what is it like to go up to somebody and say your back end is janky in a technical sense? Like, do you hurt their feelings? Are they hard to? I mean, is there a different way that if I was going into a typical merchandiser, I might be like, y'all gotta get good. Is there a different way you handle the artistic temperament if it so exists?
Yes, absolutely. I would say. I mean, I did my time in the outside world, as you know, in
Mm-hmm.
e-commerce and in like in a bunch of, basically not in the performing arts world. I did work
Mm-hmm.
in the outside, and I did definitely have to. There was definitely a mind shift set once I got into that space of really, there's a lot of people who are very passionate about the work that they do. A lot of times they've been at the organization for a really long time. That's often maybe less so the case now than it was 5
Mm-hmm.
years ago, but, like, people have been there a really long time. They can sometimes be very set in their ways, which is maybe sometimes also a bit of a thing. But yeah, I think there's also a lot of residual pride in being a part of creating amazing art. And so I think there is a sensitivity that goes into the discussions, maybe not so much around ego, but really a sensitivity around communicating that you understand, like, the importance of the value of presenting whatever they do, whatever art form that it is that they do. A sensitivity to that sort of balance between the dirty commerce and the beauty of the art. That,
Mm-hmm.
like, it's really the struggle is often like that, like their existential struggle sometimes between how do we how do we talk about what we do without devaluing it while making it really accessible to people. And so I think, but yeah, like, if I go in somewhere and, like, their business rules are dumb,
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes have no problem saying to a box office guy, like, why have you set this up this way? Like,
What
because a
is
lot
wrong with you? What were you thinking? You should be
of
ashamed.
no, no, I may not be that
No?
rough about it, but sometimes
Yeah.
we can be a little bit, like, oh, well, some of our other clients have
Mm-hmm.
had some success in
Mm-hmm.
approaching this particular problem in this way.
Yeah.
And then it's a lot of times it's very much like, oh, we didn't think about it that way, or oh, we have this reporting issue, or we have this one use case that maybe doesn't quite fit in this particular
Yeah.
model of how you might want to do this. So I think I do, I if the I would say that yes, a lot of the people that you encounter in these places are oftentimes, frustrated artists, and but
Mm-hmm.
who also feel like very, very passionate and very attached to what they do. And I worked with a bunch of people at New York City Ballet. They worked in the call center or in ticket services because they got free tickets and they could go to the ballet every day. They had that job so that they could do that. Like, there are just some people who are like, they're so dedicated to the art form that they find a way to, like, work with it and in it. And it's really delightful. And I think sometimes there is a challenge of, like, there's this sort of stereotype of that people, maybe, like, not everyone you encounter is going to be, like, practically minded or business minded. And I think that's also changing. I think
Mm-hmm.
that, so many of these arts organizations now, they make a lot of money. They operate very much like a media company or something similar, where they've
Mm-hmm.
kind of adopted that, like, content creation and monetization model that is
Mm-hmm.
very much very sophisticated and very aligned with a lot of the ways that a big media conglomerate might market their stuff. And it's, there just is a very fine line between, not making it this, horrible crass commercial experience, and then and embracing the fact that you are bringing beauty and joy and magic to people's lives, in
Mm-hmm.
a way, like you said, that literally stays with you forever. There's these Dutch professors who specialize in, like, leisure studies, and they have this way of talking about memorable versus transformative experiences. And there's a
Mm-hmm.
very specific, like, because they're social scientists, they're like, these 6 things must happen for it to be like a transformative experience
Mm-hmm.
versus just a memorable one. And you read it and you're like, and then you read it and you're like, yeah, actually, there's something to that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
an experience can be memorable, but, like, to have one be, like, fully transformative and change your way of thinking, and, like, you walk out of that beautiful theater and your eyes are opened. You see the world
Mm-hmm.
differently. Like, that happens in our world every day to, like, hundreds of people who walk in the doors of the venues that we work with. And that is, I think, everybody who works in our world, that's, I think, at the end of the day, if you really ask people, that's why we do it. That's, we want to give people, we every day is a chance to give somebody a transformative experience that can
Yeah.
really, like, change their life. It sounds cheesy as hell, but it's so true.
Well, on that note, I am changed by
Yes.
this conversation.
I'm glad.
Michaela Drapes, strategic director, head of strategy. What was your title again? So I get it right.
Director of strategy and consulting. I did just get a promotion, so the head used to be there, but is no longer there. So it's fine.
Well,
It's very
well, thank you very much for joining me, Michaela, director of strategy and consulting from Made Media. Yeah, I'll have to find out about these Dutch professors and what they're on about. Thank you for walking me through this commerce experience in events and in ticketing. I think there are a lot of things here that are just really always applicable, like the engagement with your. I have to call it a brand. You can actually say you're engaging with your art, and I think making it accessible is part of that, and
Mhm.
communicating that connection and understanding. I think it's something that vendors, integrators often overlook, is that they get down to the technical details of, well, you need to do this and that, but the first thing you have to do is really say, I understand what you are and what you're doing. And
Exactly.
it's really nice to hear how you deal with doorbusters and goblins. I think we covered a lot here, and groundlings and all of that, and all of those unique experiences that make the arts and presentation the arts. So
Yeah.
anyway, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Justin. This was so fun. Thank you.